Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second NIH Field Track Graduate and Professional School Fair. I hope you're all doing well. I said it last year, I wish we would have been in person, but I'm happy to know that at least in this virtual setting, we get to reach out to so many other students across the country. So hopefully next year, third time is a charm, we'll be in person or some kind of hybrid event. I'm Dr. Natasha Lugo Escobar. I work at the Office of Intermodal Training Education, also known as OITE, running a summer internship program for graduate and high school seniors. And today I'm going to be your moderator for today's session about getting into a PhD program in the biosciences. Just a few things before we start. This session is for you. So please feel free to post all your questions on the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A box, and we'll try to get as many questions as we can answer in this hour. And now I have the pleasure to be joined today by a great group of panelists who have vast experience with the graduate school application process and are here very happy to answer all your questions and concerns about it. So with this, I'm gonna go and have them each introduce themselves and their role at their institution, and then we're gonna go straight to the Q&A session. So I'm gonna go in the order I have in my computer. So we start with Davey.
Hi, I'm Davey Van Vactor. I am at Harvard Medical School in the Department of Cell Biology as a faculty member, but I currently direct Harvard's largest life science graduate program, PhD program in biological and biomedical sciences.
Thank you, David. Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia Cameron. I'm the Vice Dean of the Graduate School at Augusta University. And for the purpose of this meeting, I will highlight two of my responsibility, which is a summer undergraduate program for biomedical sciences and oversight of our biomedical science PhD program.
Great. Nancy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Schwartz from the University of Chicago. I'm a professor of biochemistry and pediatrics, and I'm a director of an MD PhD program, the PrEP program, an IMSD program, and a multi-generational one in neuroscience.
Awesome. Sherilyn?
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Black. I'm faculty in the School of Medicine at Duke. I am currently the Associate Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement. I've also been a principal investigator of an IMSD program and formerly was a director of the Office of Biomedical Graduate Diversity for all of the basic and biomedical sciences. It's now called the Ideals Office for graduate students and postdocs.
Victoria?
Hi, I'm Victoria Friedman. I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Programs at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. The office oversees all the PhD programs, the MD PhD. We have a PrEP, a summer undergraduate research program, and also a high school research program.
All those. Great. Niket?
Hi, I'm Nikkei Blake. I'm the Senior Associate Dean in the Graduate School at UT Health, San Antonio. Under my purview are admissions, so I oversee all admissions and student affairs. And I also co-direct a PrEP, IMSD, and Bridges grants.
Great. Thank you all for those short introductions. So I'm going to start with the first question, and I see our Q&A is filling out, so that's great. So the first question is related to the pandemic, right? So we know many students are still concerned about the impact of the pandemic on these upcoming application cycles. So I wanted to ask if you could give a little bit of insights of what you know of any changes to this application process, or flexibilities that are still in place, or what do you know so far to help our students feel a little bit less worried about it? And anyone can jump in.
Well, I'll start. I think we have all been through this and are still living through this together. And so because of that, our admissions committees are very sensitive to everything that has gone on in the past year, and they understand that students may have missed their research experiences or not been able to fulfill projects. And what they will be looking for is what students have done instead of those projects. And that should be included in your personal statements.
Thank you. Who else?
So I think a lot of students have taken the initiative during this time to do things online, whether it's summer courses and other opportunities for enrichment. And so I think they should think of those things as very sort of equivalent for many of the reviewers that are looking at their packages, and not to be shy about talking about the creative ways that they've used their time, and also the resilience that it takes for all of us to just keep on track under these very unusual circumstances. But definitely all of the reviewers are very sympathetic, because we've all been in this together in various ways. So we all understand.
And I would also just add that, this has been very unique, because I would say there's been an uptick in things like mental health challenges. A lot of students have faced personal circumstances due to COVID with family members and the loss of loved ones. So admissions committees are also very sensitive to that. So it's very important that you are open and honest about things that may have occurred that may have taken your trajectory even further off of the path than it already was disrupted by the pandemic and going virtual.
But just to add one little tiny thing is that I think we're all looking so much forward to getting back into the classroom, getting back together, that, all of our admissions processes are just so energized to bring great talent to all of our schools. It's such a, I think it's a good time to be in science and biology in particular. It's a very challenging time, but if you think about what you offer as a scientist, it's tremendous. So stick with it. I know it's been tough, but.
Thank you for that. Anyone else want to add anything else? So thank you, because I know that's been like a worry for students. So at least they can have a little bit of more peace when they think about the process. And in this, following this question, a student asked, and you might not know, but how do you anticipate the interview structure this cycle? Like virtual, hybrid, in person?
I can take a stab at that to begin with. I think that's one thing that has come out of the whole COVID, is that a lot of people did go to online virtual interviews. And I think many programs will continue those to begin with, and to have some of their initial interviews online. And then as long as situation is clear, to have on-site visits later on. So I think that a lot of schools are going to continue the virtual interviews, which allows easier access and flexibility for the applicants. And so that may be an easier thing for applicants this year as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something you're going to have to keep track of. The great thing is that the graduate interview process is late in the whole process. It's after medical students and after MD PhDs, and then come the graduate students, usually in winter, sometime between January and March. So we're all just holding our breath, and we're going to see what happens and make a decision afterwards. So we have a little bit of time, but I do know for some of the others, if anybody's interested, that they're mostly going to virtual for the first round, and then for second interviews may be able to bring some people in for in-person interviews. So it's still something that's up in the air, I think, for most schools. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to add is just that the online interview is a little bit different from the interview in person. And so it really will benefit you to do a little bit of homework on what things work well on Zoom and how to engage people effectively. because the screen just doesn't have the same depth as an in-person interview. So there's some really nice resources. The AAMC Great Group has posted some useful tips, and there's lots of other good things out there. So it's pretty easy to do the prep, but it's good to be prepared.
And I would also quickly add that, depending on what the institution is asking, if you're in a position where the institution is inviting you to visit in person, but for a variety of reasons, you don't feel comfortable or you're not able, that's a really good time for you to speak up and be sure that you're communicating with the program. Going back to what Victoria said in the beginning, everyone is going through this together and everyone is being as flexible as possible this year. So it's really important for you to be able to position things in ways that you can feel comfortable and be at your best during the interview.
Absolutely. And everyone's in a unique position. Some people have vulnerable family. We totally understand if you have special requirements. It's not a problem.
That's great that you are being flexible. They need to advocate for themselves and us. And we also at OITE on our YouTube channel, we have videos on preparing for virtual interviews, and we will have another workshop of interview next fall. So stay, looking for those. So thank you for that insight onto that question. So now one of the questions that we've gotten the most is, what makes a PhD application memorable to an admissions committee?
I'll take a stab at that one. Anything that you can do to talk about yourself is memorable, because each of us have a story. Each of us story is unique. So there is no secret sauce. There really is no secret sauce. The secret to a successful application is to be your authentic self.
I think the one thing that is good to keep in mind is that faculty are very excited to see the future of science. And so all of our reviewers really in many ways look forward to reviewing your applications. But it is a fairly intense process with a lot of reading. And so you want to make sure you take the time to write your best, clearest prose and get lots of feedback on it so that it really just flows beautifully and reads very easily. That's worth getting some good feedback from people you trust.
I would agree with what Nikay and Davey said, and then add that it's really, as you tell your story, if you can let your passion for research and science shine through, and if you can back that up with examples and experience, then you can really stand out. I'll let someone else add.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next one. We got a lot of questions. So thank you to all the students for, keeping us busy. So the next question is, I'm guessing it might be like, besides undergraduate research, what is the most important experience you look for your applicants to have?
Once again,
Yes.
there is no secret sauce, right? All of us now are practicing holistic admissions, which means that we are looking at the whole complete person, right? So you may have strengths in one area and weakness in another, but if you put your story together, your one goal is to convince the reader that you are a great candidate. Great candidates will look differently, right? Great athletes look differently. They don't all look the same. So in much the same way, great candidates will look differently. And what you have to understand are broad strokes what an admissions committee is looking for. And by your questions, you clearly already know that. We're looking for research experiences. We're looking for grades. We're looking for why you want to do this. We're looking for why you're interested in my school. We're looking for why you're interested in my faculty. You put that together in a holistic way, we're gonna look at everything.
And because the application is looked at in this holistic way, you want to make sure that your letters of recommendation are consistent and work with your personal statement. And the way to do that is to actually share a draft of your personal statement with the people who are going to write these letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
And then their letters will reflect what you have in the personal statement. And when the admissions committee looks at your application, they get the picture of the whole person. And if you keep all of that in mind as you're preparing your application, it will be a powerful application.
Mm-hmm. Onset in Dr. Friedman's comment there is be careful whom you ask for a letter. Okay. We do not care about your Burger King manager. What we want is someone that can speak about your research acumen and that can speak about your fit for our programs, right? So just be careful whom you ask for your letters.
And maybe this will cover some of the questions in the chat also, keeping on this riff of the letters, making sure that you are very open with the people you're asking to write letters, asking them if they feel that they can write you a strong letter, making sure that that letter can be comprehensive of who you are and not just describe your scientific project, but also the way that you think, your career aspirations, the kind of person you are, the kind of team player you will be in the lab, really helping to paint a picture of who you are so that the prospective department can get an idea of what it would be like for you to join the community. So letters are very important.
To Sherilyn and Nikay's points, what you really want is people who are invested in your success in the future, true mentors. And these will be people who can write letters for you many years into the future, not just for your first round at graduate school. So you want to cultivate those relationships, not just share essays with them, but really sit down and try to take some time to tell them about who you are so that they have an authentic sense and that they become your allies, your champions.
Just to continue on that one point, it's so important who you get for your letter writers. And if you have anything with your grades over time or any kind of personal things, it's sometimes better to discuss that with your letter writers and get them to be the ones that sort of bring that up and discuss it. And because they can always put a very positive spin on those kinds of things and do a better job of explaining, and it doesn't sound like you're just giving excuses for yourself, those kinds of things. So that's another way that you can use your letter writers to your advantage.
Yeah, and remember that everyone hits bumps in the road, and that science, and we all know this, is 3 steps forward and 2.5 steps back. So what the admissions committees are looking for is your story of resilience.
Yep.
You hit this particular bump. Maybe it was a semester of poor grades. Maybe it was a semester with a leave of absence, whatever it might be. What they want to hear in your personal statement and also in your letter of reference, if that's possible, is how you overcame that difficulty. Because one of the hallmarks of a scientist is resilience, and you can demonstrate your resilience in your personal statement and in the letters of reference.
Thank you for all those insights. I know letters of recommendations are really important, so I'm glad you touched on those points. One, if they have, some gaps or needs to address, that the letter of the recommender will also help on that, and that you're not expecting the perfect student with no setbacks and no failures at all. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and a word about publications. I know so many students are worried about publications. What if I don't have any? What if I have 2, but I'm not first author? If you had a lot of publications, we'd just give you the PhD and that would be the end of it. So we don't expect that you're coming in with publications. We If you have it, that's great. But if you don't worry about it. Just tell us your story and why you think that the PhD is the right path for you.
And together with that, oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
I was going to say that the letter of recommendation from the person that you wrote a paper with will often really kind of bridge that gap and explain the relevance and the importance of your contribution. And that ends up being very important because it's sometimes hard to tell from a reference what you really contributed intellectually. So it's important for your letter writers to highlight things like that.
But just to be unequivocally clear, because I see this asked over and over, letters of recommendation are not a prerequisite to apply to graduate school. I think that's what Victoria was saying, and I just want to make
Publications.
Oh, sorry.
Publication.
I'm trying to read the questions at the same time. Publications, letters of recommendation are required.
I need it.
Yeah. Publications are not a prerequisite. You do not have to have them. Obviously, it can be a feather in your cap, but I don't want anyone on here to feel discouraged that they should not apply if they don't have a publication. That is not true. And many, many, many students, probably the majority of students who get into top tier PhD programs do not have publications.
That's true for our program for sure.
Absolutely.
Good to know for them. And in that regard, what about GPA? So many students are worried about how do you, as admissions committee, rate the GPA? If I have great research experience, but maybe my GPA is not that strong, where does that factor in?
When I hear a question like this, I like to ask, what's a strong GPA?
Exactly.
Because I mean, I can tell you from my admissions committee, yeah, we do look at the GPA, but it's far more important for us to look at the rigor of your program than the GPA as a whole, right? So your job is to make sure that you're taking courses that are rigorous, courses that apply to the type of work that you want to do in graduate school. I'm not minimizing the GPA. I'm simply saying, let me be frank. I have students in my program that have GPAs under 3.0, and they're doing fabulously well. Right? That's because we don't just look at it. Stuff can happen, right? You know, you start off and you know, you think you're at school to party, you know, you major in partying, and then, you know, at some point in your career, you have a clarion moment. And then we see that your trajectory changes after that, right? So I think I like to tell people that at least in graduate education, that there is some degree of forgiveness. You know, if you mess up in one part, it won't haunt you for the rest of your life. So there's some degree of forgiveness. I would simply say, make sure you do your best and make sure you choose your courses well.
I can add that, you know, what we want to do is we want to get you into the programs, and we want to ensure that you succeed. And so we are looking for people that can succeed in our program. So that is why we look at everything. We look at your research experience. We look at your letters of recommendation. We look at your GPA. And as Nikay said, beyond the number, we look to see that, you know, you have it's good to have a strong finish. It's good to see where you started. If you have bumps along the road, what Victoria said, what you learned, how you were resilient, how you can have moved forward with the lessons learned. So you can convince the committees that you are ready to take on this PhD program. You've had the relevant coursework. Maybe every course you didn't get you know, an A in, but if you didn't, you know, what courses what do you have to balance that off? What do you have that can show that if you had a rough semester, that the next semester you came back strong and you moved forward? And so I think we're really looking at that whole picture and take everything into account. And it's your job as the applicant to tell that story, to have your letters of recommendation back that story, have them want to meet you. So when you get there at the interview, you can seal the deal at that point.
Just to reinforce Patricia's narrative analogy, I think the journey that you take in the undergraduate years, think of it as you're navigating towards something. And if your grades vary, but there's an improvement over time, or you're getting more focused over time, and you're having more fun, and you're doing better in courses that are closer to your interests. That's really useful to highlight, because it tells us that this journey is taking you somewhere, and that probably is a great sign that you're on the right track.
Mhm. And that's why some students do a master's program, and the committees look at that as continuing your trajectory forward. And if that's been your experience, you can highlight why you took the master's program and what you learned from that, and how that really made your goal even clearer to you.
Yeah, if there's anything else besides a major life experience that might give you a big change in your grades over time. The other thing is, a lot of students have to work to help put themselves through college.
Right.
And obviously, we understand that your grades are going to suffer because you have to have a lot of time to do both things. And so this is something that you could incorporate into your personal statement, and also have your letter writers mention too. If you're a strong B student and that you worked to put yourself through school, I mean, that is very impressive. And that is something that, we would like to know. It makes a big difference.
Mhm.
Just want to touch on one thing I saw in the chat. They were asking about master's programs, and does that help? Yes, it can. Bottom line, yes, it can. So if you have a low GPA and you go do a master's program, and then you have a 4.0 in your master's program, that will definitely benefit you.
Yeah, or a post-bac program, anything that allows you to have an academic continuation that shows that upward trajectory of mastery of material. It all just amounts to us wanting to feel comfortable that if you come into our program, you can be successful. That's really all that it's about.
I wanted to say that as a person who had a 3.2 GPA as an undergraduate, I really wasn't able to get into the very most prestigious graduate programs. So I applied to a range, and I ended up going to a school which ended up being a terrific fit for me. I had a wonderful experience there. I can't imagine a better experience. And I'm not going to tell you what school it is, but it was terrific. And so I think I just want to encourage you to make sure that you apply to a range of schools that can represent a challenge, but also some safe options. But there's no reason you can't have an amazing training at a range of different places. You can succeed in lots of different environments, and your job will be to try to find the environment that best fits you.
And I would also say, just to add to that quickly, because I know we have a lot of questions here, I just wouldn't count yourself out of anywhere. I think that, my attitude is always, you let them tell if you're interested. A lot of schools that you might think are out of reach, we all do admissions at all of these schools. There is a wide range of, the type of application that ends up being successful. There are some applications that you might think would sail through, but because of the things Nikkei raised about, not really showing that scientific curiosity, there are all different kinds of reasons why people get selected. So again, I would not count yourself out. I would, bring your authenticity and really just go for what
Go for it.
Yeah.
100%.
So will you say for those, before this, I want to plug the post-bac program at the NIH, which is an awesome option. So look on the website, there's videos.
We take those students every year.
Yeah, we are very, very keen on students who've had that experience.
Yeah, so for those students, those of you who don't feel like, are prepared or want more time to do research, think about prep and post-bac programs, and we have as well an awesome program, right? I have to sell it.
And you can find the prep programs, which are the post-bac programs that are outside the NIH.
Exactly.
You can find those on the NIH website as well. And several of us are directors of prep programs. And we think that they're a terrific way to prepare yourself for the PhD.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So my question, following Sherilyn's, so for some students, and we get this on the sessions that we have with them, they don't know how to kind of position themselves when if it's a safe or a rich school, because it's really hard. All websites are very different. So what would you recommend for students who are thinking, how do I know how competitive I am, or if the school is rich for me or safe? Can I contact the program directors and ask them about kind of the, I guess, the credential of the accepted applicants? What will be your insights on that?
I can start off quickly here, and I see that's actually the second highest question asked too about, what do you think about contacting faculty ahead of time? I personally think that's a great idea. Going back to what Davey said at the beginning, we get hundreds and hundreds of applicants for very few slots. So anything that you can do to help yourself be memorable and stand out is a plus. And I think that if you have questions about your alignment for the program, thinking about those types of things, the best people to answer those questions are people in the program. There can be a lot of assumptions made about what schools are looking for or what GPAs. People don't know that unless they're actually the ones on the admissions committees at that school. And the last piece that I'll add to it is, I also think it's just a really good chance for you to also make sure the school's a good fit for you, because if you contact them, you can learn more about the kind of mentoring structures that are in place, the way that students are engaged in the department, the kind of freedoms you'll have as a student to approach different questions. So that contact is all, I think it's usually good. I wouldn't overdo it. People are busy, obviously, but I think that, reaching out to people, having some level of persistence just to make sure you get your questions answered is always a good step. And a good place to start can always be the program directors or the sort of program, administrative assistants. And sometimes they can also help to get you paired up with faculty if you're not getting responses.
And don't forget that this NIH graduate fair is a perfect place to start, because you have before you most of the graduate programs in the United States. You can go through the list. You will be able to meet the program directors and students in the program, and they all want you. So you can't lose. You can ask any question you'd like, and it would be a wonderful way to start the whole process.
Yeah. This is a great place to do it because you are one of several hundred students. You can ask the question that you perceive to be the dumbest question, and none of us are going to remember. This is a place to be just your true self. So this is a good start.
This is safe space.
What happens on the Zoom stays on the Zoom.
Yes, right.
And I'll add that a lot of schools now, again, this is the lesson of COVID for the academy. A lot of schools now are doing Zoom calls or Zoom sessions. Right. So if you see a school that you're interested, go look on their website, see if they have something that they're doing admissions and Zoom, and go to them. You'll talk to people there and you'll gain information that will help you to make the determination.
Yeah. So one thing you want to remember, that looking for a graduate program is different than looking for an undergraduate school. When you're looking for a graduate program, what you're really trying to find out is what kind of research training am I going to get here? So a good place to start is to look at the kind of research that is going on and what really interests you, what excites you, what do you see yourself wanting to learn more about. That will help you select programs and schools that you might be interested in. And you will find that even with umbrella programs, which incorporate all the different disciplines in the biosciences, still there might be a focus, let's say, on neuroscience, or maybe on biophysics, or whatever it may be. And that's what you should be looking for. Where will you have the most research opportunities? Where can you learn and grow as a scientist?
So in that, we talk about them contacting, program directors in terms of like getting more information about the program and how they fit and their credentials. But there's also a lot of questions on if they should contact faculty to work with before applying. Like, what is your intake on contacting PIs right before even applying to the program or being accepted into the program?
The short answer to that is it depends.
It depends, right? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are some programs that a lot of the umbrella programs contacting the faculty before probably won't serve you a lot of good. But for programs that are departmental based, contacting the programs directly might do you a lot of good. So it really depends, right?
Yeah.
So all of us are going to be, if you're asking some really nuanced questions, all of us are going to be at this event for much of the week. Just go ask these to somebody who has time to sit down. We're like 20 minutes to end time for this one, so it's hard to really answer the questions as completely as you'd like. Go find a program, sit with them, talk to them. All of us we're so happy to give you information, and it's a non-threatening environment. So go ask those specific questions to the specific programs that you're interested in.
And if you don't find somebody at this meeting, just email the program director and ask that question. They'll tell you honestly. I mean, I think it's often the case that the small program, it is a value.
Yeah, what we find across the variations is also sometimes discipline specific.
Yep.
If you're more in the physical sciences, sometimes the individual faculty can weigh in on making the decisions, the admissions decisions. And in the biological sciences, if you're more in the field sciences, ecology, evolution, all those kind of things, again, sometimes the faculty play into the admissions. If you're in all that space in the middle, where we use admission committees and you're just admitted to the program and then you do rotations, and that's how you kind of find your PI. So, but the one thing I wanted to mention in all these things, when you do the individual school Zooms, or you do any of these fairs like we're going to have this week, or SACNAS, all those kind of things, what you will find is students. Talk to students. You will get better information from current students than sometimes from faculty or program directors or recruiters who are going to give you a very fine line of things. So always try to talk to students.
So quick question for everyone. How many schools should students apply to, just to wrap out this section? How many schools should students apply to this year?
And I think for graduate school, 6 to 8 is usually it. If you're doing medicals or MD, PhD, you go into double digits.
10.
I would say 10.
That's where I would come down to, David.
And I also just want to put in a plug and remind you that some schools have application fee waivers. We're talking about large numbers of schools to apply. And like Nancy said, a lot of you might be working and things like that. So you could always check with the graduate school and just see if they have a fee waiver program. Sometimes it's just about asking. So you could always check on that if you're concerned about the cost of applying to school.
And asking now when they go and meet you at the booth as
Absolutely.
well. And just to wrap up the application part, the other questions very common is the GRE. So some students get confused when they say GRE are optionals or GRE are, obviously it's not required, but what is your intake if they say are optional? Is it something good for them to submit or not?
Only if your scores are really good. If you have really good scores, then sure. I have my own personal feelings about that. Why don't one of you guys?
Well, we understand how kind of confusing that is. So in our language for our application, we say we don't even consider the GRE because we feel that the
Good to know.
GRE is
We don't.
We
particularly
don't either.
Okay, so good for them to know
For the
that.
schools you don't have to submit it to.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what I would say, Nancy.
Yes. And if in doubt, then always contact the program directors. Then I wanted to get to another question about, this is more like wellness and support for students. So do graduate programs accommodate for students with learning disability? And the second question, how would a student can best ask about mental health support services or programs without feeling like they're going to be stigmatized or there's going to be a bias because they're already asking that? So maybe there's something going on there. So how can you assure the students that that is something important to ask and find in your programs?
This is where
Oh, go on, Nikki.
this is where talking to students really matter. This is where you can be sort of anonymous with students. So I realize that whether we like it or not, people make judgments about people based on this. Although it is less common now than it used to be, we're far more we're far more aware of it. So I would say ask the students, but I would also say ask the administration, whether it's program directors or your dean's office or so. Those are the people that are probably going to interface at that level, right? So I deal with all the mental health issues. I don't deal with all, I triage all the mental health issues at my institution. So I would say just talk to students, because my students I know use our mental health services really well. They know it better than I do, right? Because they're using it. So talk to students, and then talk to people like the people in this room.
Yeah, and I would also add, I think just like I mentioned earlier about you all also critically evaluating the programs you're going to apply to. I think that programs should be proactive about telling students about how they're going to provide support for them. And so it shouldn't necessarily be on you to have to disclose personal health information to a program when you're applying. So I would actually, maybe see how the program handles it. That's just one strategy, of course. I think, especially in my role in the provost office, I see a lot of programs working to make sure that they're providing a lot of transparency with the services that can be provided to students, to take that burden off of the students. So I would definitely encourage you to use that as somewhat of a barometer for selecting the kinds of environments you want to train in.
It definitely gives you a sense of how they prioritize that support. But if you just simply ask about healthcare, usually our website for our university health services will include the relevant information about what kind of mental health support and wellness. So it's possible that you can find out quite a lot on the websites, but I think most of the colleagues that I know are trying to be more and more forthcoming about those resources, because it's been a hard 2 years,
Yeah. And also it's every school that you look at, this is one of the important factors. A PhD takes a long time. You're going to be there 5 years or longer. Things happen along the way, whether it's an academic challenge or a personal challenge, and you want to be sure that the program and the institution has the resources to support you and make sure that you succeed. So it's a very important question when trying to see if the school is the right fit for you. Definitely ask about support services.
Thank you for emphasizing that, so that they, sometimes we say it and they don't believe it, but when we keep talking more and more about it, that's an important factor for them to consider. Another question that I have is, do graduate programs prefer students with other interests beyond scientific research? Do extracurricular activities or other majors help during the application process?
I would say that think of this as a professional school application. So if the extracurriculars are really relevant to your interests, let's say you do educational outreach or you work in the community in some way that's tied to your longer term aspirations. Academics do all kinds of activities outside of their academic work and their research, but those things are going to be kind of less, people will pay less attention to those features, so they'll be more relevant to the application if they tie to your goals.
I think the only exception might be student athletes, because if an applicant has spent a great deal of time developing as an athlete and also developing as a scientist, this speaks to the fact that you know how to manage your time, you know how to get things done. Right. You are purposeful and driven, and you have goals. All of that will make a wonderful essay.
I think I would add that any of your activities that have been significant parts of your time and energy could fall in that same category. So if you were in leadership in student government, if you did the newspaper, if you had a job, whatever it is, I think the key that we mentioned earlier is we are looking to determine if you can be successful in our programs. So everything that you are describing, I would just think about continuing to frame it to help us understand how that contributes to you being a successful scientist and a great colleague for us to have in our programs. That's the way I would frame everything, and just always keep your eye on the fact that that's ultimately what we're looking for. Right. So it's not like coming from high school where you just do a litany of programs, but there's not really any understand, clearly it's great if you have a lot of engagement and you still did well academically, but I want to understand, the bigger picture of how that's connecting to you being able to be successful in the next phase of your career.
Yeah, if you do those other things, one aspect of it that you can emphasize too is team building, because science is moving in that direction.
It is
and
there.
They want to make sure that we bring into our programs people that are willing and able to work together and work in teams.
Those transferable skills that they can apply. And this is a quick follow-up to the application, the number of applications. So there are some students that have been asked to share the other schools that they're applying to. Why would they ask for that? And would that have any negative impact on their prospect to get into that school that is asking about that? No idea. So we've heard
if there's any negative.
None of us asked that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think there's any negative impact.
We've asked that in the past, but it has no negative impact.
Okay. So that's a good clarification, that it's no harm to just tell them what other schools they're applying to as well. And then I have a question here about funding. So one of the worries, right, is funding the way to grad schools, and we know, that's part of being a grad student. But some of them are asking about what other funding opportunities they have if they should apply to grants or funding, such as the NSF doing undergrad, or once they're in school. How can they find those opportunities for funding?
Usually the schools have all of these on their own websites. I mean, for the NSF, graduate fellowships, for the NIH F30s, all that kind of stuff. The information is going to be there with deadlines and what you need to do it, and all the society and private foundation things. It's going to be on there, and they're going to promote it too, because they both want you to get funding, so they do not have to, pay you through their institutional resources or training grants. On the other hand, they want you to look as good as you can, and getting individual fellowships is one of the things that we all brag about with our students. So it's part of your success being at that school.
Many schools have support staff that are devoted to helping facilitate for the administrative. They have courses or preparatory or writing fellowships. So you can ask about those things when you're looking at a program.
But the expectation is not that you have this money coming in.
And,
In fact, we assume you do not, and you should not be worrying about it at this stage.
want to just add one slight caveat that is mostly related to the biomedical sciences. For some of the other sciences, that may not be absolute.
Thank you. And one question about international students. How can, if you have an international applicant, how can they best gain experiences to come into the US and to best prepare for a program here if they are outside the United States?
I think one of the biggest challenges international students have is getting research experience. And research experience is critical to the graduate experience. So many of our international students actually do a master's degree before. So for the typical student trained in the US, an undergraduate degree with research experience is enough to get you into grad school. If international students cannot get that research experience, one way to do it is to enroll in a master's program to get that research experience. But I think for the international students, that's the limiting factor, because many countries that these students come from just don't have the research enterprise to give them that experience. But you're probably not going to get into grad school without research experience.
It doesn't have to be research experience in the US. It could be,
Correct.
you know,
Correct.
in any other country, essentially. The kind of the duration and the quality of the experience is very important, but it doesn't have to be here.
And do they need to apply for someone else if they need to apply for scholarship or assistantship separately as an international student?
Probably depends on the program and how it's financed, but I don't know of a program that makes that requirement.
Right.
So this question is about the personal statements. And we have about 8 minutes left. How will you describe the difference between a statement of purpose and a personal statement, or ask about the various statements in general, like many schools ask for like the diversity, research statements separate? How can they manage all that and understand what do you want from each of those? That's a big question.
I could definitely start and just say quickly that that's one of the ones we're talking to the program. If you have any need for clarification about what the prompts mean, you can certainly talk to the program director about that. One thing I would just emphasize to be careful about, especially if you're applying to many different schools do have nuanced questions and prompts on their applications. And so if you're planning on using the same statement for many schools, just make sure you carefully read the prompt and that you tailor it to that institution. That's definitely a plug for not procrastinating and getting this done as quickly as possible, because sometimes those adaptations can take longer than you think. You'll have the wrong name of the school in there. You'll have the wrong prompt. So, I do think that, talking to the program directors for clarity is good, but also making sure that you accordingly tweak that statement for each school.
Sometimes when a school says statement of purpose, what they want to hear is how your research experiences led you to the idea of a PhD. And where do you think that the PhD is going to take you? And what are you envisioning as a future career with a PhD? And that, for some schools, may be separate from a personal statement, which could be more of the personal story or personal history of how you got to this point.
Thank you for that. I know they get confused and with that, so it's good for the clarification.
Just read the prompts carefully. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
If there's any questions, just follow up and ask.
Right. So we have 5 minutes left. And I just wanted to ask kind of like, in general, then what will be the best advice you will give to students that are applying to this upcoming cycle? for them to get into grad school?
I can start. I can say, well, start easy, start early and be thoughtful. It's really an exercise in self-reflection, so that you can look at all those experiences you've had, like Sherilyn said, and then start to put them together so you can connect the dots and tell your story. It's that story you tell and how you tell it, which is going to be important. And I heard a lot of questions about what the admissions committee is looking for. I also think it's really important for you to understand through this process what you're looking for as well, because this is really a big commitment. Like Victoria said, you're going to come into a program, spend a number of years there. Things will go right, things won't always work, but that commitment that you have is really important. So finding the school that is the best fit for you, I think, is important. So I think looking at it in terms of what the school has to offer you and what you're looking for in the school to find that best fit and telling your story is really an important thing.
The only other thing I would add is we all know that the last 18 months have been horrendous for everybody, especially for students. And there are many things that you might have wanted to do and not been able to get research experience last summer, or even this summer during school, all those kind of things. If you don't think you're ready, then take some time and do whatever you want to prepare yourself. You'll feel better if you really have that confidence than just thinking you got to plow ahead and, you know, I'm graduating next year, I've got to move on to the next thing. There's nothing wrong. And we have absolutely fantastic programs that you can spend a year in. And most of these programs have extremely high acceptance rates. So taking off a year in 20 or 30 years is not gonna, you know, nobody's even gonna know.
And the experience that you get in those programs only makes you a stronger student once you get in.
Yep.
So it's something that can help you.
Yeah, I always say to students, you're not catching a train. So take the time to be prepared. You know now that research experience is the core of the PhD application. Your personal statement is based on the research experience. Your interview is based on the research experience, and your future plans and what you write about them is also based on your research experience. So if you feel that that has been less than ideal, as Dr. Schwartz said, take the time for a year or two or even 3, and then apply to graduate school. And if you're applying this year, start now. What students don't realize is it's almost a full-time job in itself. And you're already taking the first great step, which is to attend the NIH graduate fair. So that's great.
To Victoria's point, about 50% of our graduate matriculating students have done 1 or more years postgraduate research, often full-time. But if you are applying this year, also really engage your mentors this summer and, you know, begin to shape that, because that's going to have a very important impact on your letters and also your own narrative.
I wanted to just say, Victoria mentioned the research experience was important, not just to check the box, but your ability to talk about your research, what it meant, how you understand it, how it fits into your story. So you really do need to have that understanding where you can have that conversation about what you've done, why it's important, why it fits into the field, and what you've learned through it.
Yeah, and I was also going to add on to Victoria's comment as well and just say that, you know, I think I could imagine if I was in your shoes, I might be saying, but how do I know if I'm ready? And how do I know if the delay from COVID means that I should wait? This is where your mentors are really important. You know, sit down with your faculty that you trust, your mentors, your program directors, and say, I really want to apply. These are the things that I'm concerned about. Can you give me an honest assessment about how competitive you think I am to get into the schools that I would like to go to this year? And those are people that are invested in you and want to support you and will give you honest answers and help you to prepare. So I like to tell students, take the guesswork out of it because you don't know what you don't know. But there are a lot of people like us who do this work and can give you, more thorough answers that are probably more accurate for what actually it's going to look like on the other end.
Thank you so much. Oh, Victoria, one last word. We are like.
The last word is I wanted to say that engage the program directors. They all want to meet you. They all want to talk to you, and they all want to help you.
Yeah,
So-
can I say one last plug? We have a Twitter for the great group. All of us have individual Twitters. I know a lot of you are on Twitter and that's your preferred mode of communication. So tweet us questions if you can't get a chance to connect with other people, and we'll do our best to answer them, but especially look for the great group Twitter because that's a good way to connect to us.
Hey, good luck out there.
Yes, good luck.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, the panelists, for all your insight. Thank you, everyone who is watching us. Remember, there's no shame in asking. Go to the exhibitors, ask questions, look for Career Services Center in your university. If you're a postdoc at the NIH, contact us in OITE. We have a lot of help. Ask for support, and we wish you the best in this upcoming cycle. So we'll see you hopefully next year in person. Thank you all.
Good luck, everybody.
Bye-bye.